It's a high-tech conversation
and a low-tech topic.
live on the World Wide Web via Zoom. Bench Talk 101.
Welcome everybody to tonight's Bench Talk 101. It's quite an interesting one as we wait for the American elections to come through. I'm looking at some of our American colleagues there who are, cheering on different people. We won't go into who they're cheering on. Maybe they'll give it away as we go on. But this is a situation where we created this Bench Talk to get people together, and we did it at the start of lockdown back in March. And what we now find ourselves in is our second lockdown in England. And as of today, we're now in lockdown again, right through until the 2nd of December. So we're going to still be here for the next few weeks. Hopefully you guys can carry on joining us, and we can hear from lots of great speakers and share that knowledge and share that expertise that we all like to hear. So without further ado, best way to do this is to put yourself on, keep yourself on mute, wait till the end of the talk. You can ask questions by putting your name in the chat. And then the best way to view it is to go to speaker view. And then sit back and take your bench beverage and enjoy what you're gonna hear. So tonight we're going to have Derek, who's going to introduce our guest speaker, which is Phil. So Derek, over to you.
Sure, lovely. Thanks, everybody. So Philip Morley is a custom furniture maker located near Austin, Texas. He was originally trained in carpentry and joinery at the age of 16 under the City and Guilds program in London. His interest turned to fine furniture while working alongside a Rhode Island School of Design graduate, where he quickly fell in love with the precision, craftsmanship, and creativity required to make fine furniture. After a 6-year apprenticeship with master craftsman Michael Kolker, he started his own business. In addition to building furniture, Philip is also an adjunct professor at Austin Community College in the Building Construction Technology Department, teaching advanced woodworking. Philip is very active on Instagram and has worked on a podcast focused on woodworking called, wait for it, the Woodworkers Podcast, and is also an instructor for the Wood Whisperers Guild. He's won several awards for his furniture in the past, including Best in Show at the Texas Furniture Makers Show. And somehow, amongst all this, he's a contributing author to Fine Woodworking magazine. I've heard of that somewhere, and has appeared in several other publications. Tonight, though, he's agreed to put aside his hectic schedule and tell us exactly what it's like to be an Englishman in Austin.
That's about the weirdest thing I've ever sat through. you nailed it.
Not too uncomfortable for you, I hope. I'll put myself on mute. It's over to you, Phil, so take it away, mate.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm just going to give you a little brief history. Derek pretty much covered it there, so I don't want to bore people. But what I'm going to try to do, so you're not looking at my ugly mug for 20 minutes, I'm going to try, so probably mess it up a little bit, but be patient. I'm going to try to upload some pictures of my work, and I'm going to try to do it in a way that it makes sense, just kind of following my journey a little bit, and I'll try not to overdo it, because again, there's only so much you can hear someone talk about their furniture. So it's pretty weird talking about yourself. It's not the thing I'm most comfortable with, but this is awesome that you guys are doing this. So again, I appreciate you having me on. But yeah, so got into the trades in London, England. I was brought up in Cricklewood and went to North Barnet Community College. And before that, I basically got expelled from high school. I was a troubled teen, dyslexic, so dyslexia wasn't really recognized back then in England that much. So it's just behavior problems more than anything. And then I ended up just getting in a lot of fights and getting into trouble. So they shipped me out to Essex, and that's where I went to school. So every day, 5 days a week, they would send a taxi and pick me up and drive me to Essex and back from London. So it's a little bit crazy. That school really was focused on, it's a nunnery school. It was ran by nuns. It was focused on more my attitude than fixing dyslexia or giving me the tools I need to help me with dyslexia. They knew if they couldn't get through with my attitude, then nothing else is going to work anyway. And they really did. They turned me around from a little punk kid to where I am now. So I'm very thankful for them. It took a little bit more of getting in some serious trouble, almost going to juvenile prison, and basically being told that, you know, they were going to make an example out of me. But obviously I have a good family, and that's one thing I've always had for me, hardworking dad and mom that stayed home with us. So I had that. A lot of people, friends I had, did not have that. So it makes all the difference. But basically said, you need to get a focus. And so that's where, as you all know, kind of how the system works there, like sixth form college. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go on an academic path to college. So I'm going to go to trade school. Did that, fell in love with carpentry and joinery. Always was that kid that messed around with things. You know, I always said I fixed stuff. My parents would disagree and say I broke stuff. I was just always curious about how things worked. I think I went at 15, 1 day a week to give it a go. 16, did full-time, 3 years, got my, I forget what they call it now, like I think it's like the platinum card or something. Basically, you could do 1, 2, or 3 years, and then you went off and worked on site. And so worked on site for a year with a company called TJ Lowry. I don't know if they're in existence anymore, but they did restoration work on Victorian Edwardian homes around London. The last job I worked there was in Covent Garden. Quickly learned that I was working around people that you would assume were probably 80 years old, and they were really about 50. And it was just pretty brutal work in those old homes, sucking up all that nasty old dust, you know, you ripping apart all the architrave and stuff. As much as I loved doing that work, I knew pretty early on I wanted to get more where it's more controlled. So having my own studio, working in my own space, not traveling with my tools and in a van everywhere and getting stuff nicked from me and broken into, and you know all that comes along with the traveling carpenter. So I came to America. Basically, I think I was 18. It was a summer. I knew if I was just going to hang out back home, I would get pulled back into trouble. And so I just decided I'm just going to go to America. So I went to a program called Camp America, and that brought me to Maine. And I'll fast forward a little bit, but I basically met a beautiful Texan, not American, a Texan, and fell in love. It was not love at first sight. I won't tell you my impressions, my first impressions of her, but they weren't great at first. But yeah, really got to know Carmen, who's my wife now, and just absolutely loved her and adored her. Did the long distance thing, back and forth. I was carpenter, summertimes I'd come over. She went to school in Rhode Island, in Providence. And that's where I got introduced to, I wish I could even remember their names. I don't remember their last names. David was one of the guys, but graduates from the Rhode Island School of Design. And they were doing that was kind of the first time I knew about studio furniture making, which is a really odd thing because people always assume that I got that being in England. And I wasn't really aware of it as much when I was in England. It took me to come over to America then to realize, oh, wow, there's some fantastic schools and places in England I would love to have gone to. Did that, you know, in summertimes back and forth, decided this is what I want to do. You know, wanted to live in the country, same country as my girlfriend, at least for a year to see if it wasn't a romance of moving back and forth, and got a business visa. Found a company that could kind of swing it to where I had a job that no other American had. It's a very strange thing, but you have to, you know, they have, you know, you have to prove that you have a job that they're lacking, I guess. So me being a carpenter and going through some type of program, which they didn't have, helped me. Did that, asked her to marry me. Fast forward a little bit more, you know, start having kids, did a 4-year apprenticeship, then a 7-year apprenticeship with Michael Colker, who is a dear friend. I still live close to him. An amazing craftsman, very arts and crafts style. So now I've been in my own business for about 6 years. I'm really bad with dates. So if someone to sit down, add all this up and be like, you should be 90 years old. I'm terrible at dates. I have 4 kids. Don't ask me their ages. They go from 4 to 12. My wife stays home, homeschools them. She helps me with my business. She's not really a big fan of helping necessarily with the business, but you definitely need someone else to help you do this. And like Derek mentioned, all those other things basically allow me to be very selective in the work that I do. It's always important to me to do work I was very proud of, and that just takes time and to slowly build up to get the right client that has the money to be able to do. That's the unfortunate thing with what I do. It makes me feel a little guilty sometimes, is the pieces are very expensive, so therefore the clients have to have a lot of money. And so there's always that nagging feeling like, so I just build for rich people. And I'm not complaining, but I would love my furniture to be more accessible to more people that value and appreciate what I do. But to be able to continue to do that, I do teach. I travel around the US and teach. Hopefully I'll be back to London and teach. One of the classes is my lounge chair class, but I do several other pieces of furniture that I do travel and teach, and help start a school, all that stuff. All of it helps. Writing articles and everything else, so that way I can keep doing what I do. My shop is right next to my house. And that's what was really important to me, is to be around my family. They don't have to do what I'm doing, but I felt that it was important that they saw me get up and actually make stuff. And so I'm doing that. I will try to upload some images and just kind of go through those quickly. I figured that'd be probably more interesting than what you just witnessed. And obviously, when it comes to question time, feel free to ask whatever you want. So let me see if I can do that. So I think you're going to have to let me share screen. And would that be Derek? Who will give me the ability to share screen?
Yeah, I've just done it for you. It should be there now. So.
All right, let's have a look. Yeah, there it is. All right, so I'm going to try. Give me 1 second. I'm going to switch to camera mode here, so I don't have to look upside down at my phone. I loaded pictures. Unfortunately, I did not load it in any order, so I'm just going to quickly try to get some of these up in somewhat of an order. Have some of my apprentice, the gentleman I did my apprenticeship with. Let's see. And then some of them will probably not be in order, so I apologize. And I will try to flick through them quickly. It's only about 600 pictures, is that okay? I'm joking. And I'm going to finish it probably with just some work on upcoming work, and I could talk a little bit about how I design and kind of what works for me. All right, so done. Okay, let me know if that's working.
Yeah, that's all good. That's all good.
All right, so I'll just kind of go through this quickly and just talk a little bit about it. But so here I am at, I believe I was 14, maybe 15 here, and this was at that behavior school that got me into it. So basically, if I didn't get any fights or anything, I got extra shop time, and so that stopped me from getting fights. And here's a little, I don't know what that is, a medicine cabinet probably. I think that's like an MDF door. But here's my family. This is a few years old. But yeah, 4 of us were the kind of awkward homeschool family. A lot of Brits always find that interesting that we're homeschooled. I know my parents did. This is my mentor, Michael, who I really accredit for where I am today. He really excelled me in my craft. He is amazing, an amazing craftsman. He really is. And so this is us working on a big kind of china cabinet. The attention to detail he does, inside, outside, underside, backside, it's as perfect as the face. It's truly amazing. He's a lot more arts and crafts style than I am. I'm a little bit more kind of Scandinavian, I don't know, a little more clean line. But these are a few pieces we designed and built together. I worked for him for 7 years, but part of that was part-time. He is also an adjunct professor, teaching woodworking, and we both just teach one class a semester. So that way I'm not away from home too much. So here's somewhat of a production piece, build maybe 4 to 6 of these a year. I wait until I get about an order for 4, and then, in a year's time, they usually wait a year and the chair will be ready. This is the very first piece I built as Philip Morley Furniture. This client basically understood that the deposit that he's given for this piece will allow me to finish my shop. And so he was willing to do that and allow me to, this was the first piece I would build with that deposit. I got pretty ill for a while. I had quite a scare, and for some reason that made me start my own business. It makes no sense. But you still get that arts and crafts style in this piece. It's got displayed sides. What I liked about this piece is usually you have really big members on arts and crafts style because you need the integrity of the mortise and tenons. Everything is recessed back. So within that piece, when you open up those doors, you'll see the bigger component, but that's not what's visually on display. So the structure's there. It's all solid wood construction, all traditional mortise and tenon, not done traditionally, but all mortise and tenons, no slip tenons or integral. Little drop pull. I usually, when I do stuff like this was an article. So that always helps. You're building a piece and they might want to do an article on it or on a certain aspect of it. I would never be able to do an article on a piece that big, but the drop pull was a fun article. This is a record console. These may all be out of order now. Just mahogany. This is more my style, a bit more mid-century modern. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I just try to work with good proportions and not trying to design something that's so original that it's new. Just kind of building upon what's been done, I guess. So I do a lot of those pieces. Here's a piece I built. I built the first one of these, this piece, it's out of order. This piece probably 10 years ago, and someone reached out to me. I forgot I had it up on a site. I think, when you first start out, you're trying to sell your work. It was on Etsy, and they bought it. I didn't realize it was there. And so I had to contact them. They're in New York, and the lady was so nice and allowed me to redesign it because I was not very proud of how that first one was. So this was her piece. There's a little display case I built, made the pulls out of brass, faceted, and then the LEDs are custom made brass too, out of pear, walnut. It's got a parquetry. You can't really see the parquetry. It's kind of hard to see it a little bit in that picture. Just really subtle, three-way miter. The glass frame pops out, and that's how you put your art piece in there. And this is the lounge chair. So the lounge chairs, I've written articles on it. I'm doing a class for the Woodworker Guild on it. It's kind of got a lot of interest, and I think it's because I also teach it. But again, it's undoubtedly mid-century modern. What I like to do is try to add a little bit that most manufacturers, bigger companies won't add. And in the details. So in these pictures you can't see it, but everything's got a nice little subtle shape to it, like edge profile. And I love tree and edges, just putting that extra little bit of time in. You can kind of see some of it there, but yeah. So this is a fun piece. I teach this. I'll be teaching it again next year at Mark Adams, and in Florida, I think, to the Florida School of Woodwork. But these are the little details that once you have the piece and you get to kind of live with it, you start, your hands will just start wandering around and you feel these little details like, oh, wow, like you didn't need to do that. But it does make a big difference. Another console, did not do the marquetry here. I've learned early on to just hire people that are better than you. I would love to be proficient at everything in the craft. It's just really not possible. So my friend Ramon Artful did the Holly marquetry on that. And this is whole shop-made plywood and 1/16 veneer all laid up in the shop with solid edge banding. Some display boxes. My phone. Oh no! What happened? Sorry, guys.
We can still see the slideshow though.
You can. Okay, that's weird. Let me get back to it. I'm sorry. There it is. I think I just swiped a little too far on my iPhone and it went off the whole thing. So I'll try to kind of go through these quick, but this is a little display case for a katana a gentleman was having made in Japan. And this piece was a companion piece to that other walnut case. And yet it's totally out of order. Bird's eye maple, mahogany, hand cut dovetails at an angle. The table I've done a couple classes on and build these different versions of these quite a bit. I love dealing with end grain. So anything end grain, sanding in a nice subtle profile. And, I get kind of bored. It's always some type of fingernail edge. But this is all kind of before the pandemic. This was meant to be an article, but we'll kind of postpone that until things, we'll figure out what's going on. But that would be an article for Fine Woodworking Magazine. Another one of those tables. So I think Morocco chair detail. Again, so this has, I like having the same kind of language. So on this chair, like a lot of the end details have the same type of little scoop and it's treated the same. So it's polished out really nice. And it's one of those things that you probably don't have to do it, but I believe, even though a client can't say what they like about it or point to it, they're seeing it without even knowing. It's just without the grill. It's a sexy picture, some professional photograph that photographer took for the Macintosh equipment. So this is a piece coming up. So I typically design, no longer on vellum. I used to draft, I had a big mechanical arm and drafting on vellum. It's a little harder to do that and get it to the client. And so clients tend to like a visual. And so the way I design now is they ask me, they tell me a little bit what they want in it. And I don't give them options as kind of rude as that sounds. I try to design a piece I really want to build and send them that. And that's typically what they're going to go with. And then we're both going to be probably the happiest. And again, obviously I work with them. I'm not a prima donna. I'm not going to say, no, I can't do that. But for the most part, they go with what I send. So this will have a hidden drawer, humidor, different little things going on. Another piece, little side table with a whiskey lift that will come up. The whiskey bottle will come up out of it. And these, I think these are slated for next year. So these are some lounge chairs. I'm practicing steam bending. Never done it before for the back leg. So that'd be fun to do. So yeah. So that is that. Kind of a ramble through my little history of furniture there. And my goal really is it's just to try to build the best that I can, understanding I'm fully human, and I'm always learning as I go. So anytime I have a new piece, I try to add an element that I haven't done before. I could make more money by not doing so, but I will do it like this as long as I can until I can't. So I figured you might as well start out that way instead of starting out with making it as cheaper and not being as happy and just getting stuck in that kind of rut, which can happen to a lot of people. You take a lot of cabinet jobs on and stuff because you've got to pay the bills, which I totally get, but then you get stuck doing that work. Just recently, I have taken on an apprentice, Amanda. Russell, Sawdust Woman on Instagram. She's been a student of mine. She TAs with me with the Austin School of Furniture. It's a school I helped start. We were doing really well before, all this crap happened. So right now we're kind of actually closing it, and we're going to wait until this pandemic's, what happens to it, and then we'll start back up. But she also traveled to Florida and taught with me too. So she's in the shop right now working. That's why I'm in my house. But yeah, so it's a little different having someone work for you. Makes you a little more credible. You've got to be more organized, which I'm not organized at all. But it's a good thing. She's working on a line of furniture that I've designed and we'll build together. And the idea is she can get her training, and then I could try to get a few pieces that are available now, and you don't have to wait a year to 2 years to get it, and it'll be priced a little bit cheaper, not IKEA cheap, but a little bit cheaper, and kind of fill that little urge I have of more people being able to own a piece of mine. So that's kind of it.
Wow, that was brilliant. And I mean, your attention to detail on the furniture, those pictures were really good, and you could really see how that your passion from those early days of being excited about woodwork has really come through to the quality of the design, but also the quality of the build and the finish. It's quite interesting that you understand your limits as well, getting other people to do the marquetry and it's a business mind that you've got to get into, and you've got to learn when to say no.
It's tough. Yeah, that's probably been the last few years. Like with the marquetry, even now, I was like, okay, I've charged enough for this piece to actually learn how to do this. And then I'm thinking, it's a little arrogant thinking I can just pick it up and learn it in a few months and get this piece done. But then, the reality kicks in. It's like, okay, I'm already over on this piece. It's taking too long. I need to get it done. My friend is fantastic at marquetry. I just need to hire him. So it is a bit of the business mind of it. I don't want to do it so much to where I farm. Like a lot of people actually farm out a lot of different aspects of their stuff. I think for production stuff, that's fine. But I still, clients are paying me to do the piece. I still want to do it, but I definitely, I know my limitations. I have a lot.
I hope you don't mind, Phil, though. I was quite I put a comment on the email that I sent out to everybody about today's talk, and I said about about how the Morley chair could be the design icon of the future, and I said that because the way that you've gone about it, actually, the way that you've been in London, you kind of didn't have a good start. You then made something out of an opportunity, went across to America and used that passion and that skill that you've learnt, and created a design that's really quite, it's eye-catching, it's comfortable, people enjoy it, you've got a waiting list for it. But now you're actually doing the teaching of it as well. So you're talking about Florida, you're talking about Texas and different things on the courses. And of course, I've asked you to come to London as well, come back to London and come and deliver it at the London Design and Engineering UTC as well. So I think that, that chair is going to become an icon, because more and more people can either buy it from you or they can, make it for themselves. So I think, it's something to look forward to, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm it's, you want, you like to stay, anytime you talk about yourself, you can sound not like humble. But it is a very, it's an interesting thing how like it's gone full circle. And to just be even recognized for my work, and I still kind of have to pinch myself, because I'm just some, dumb kid from London that's just building furniture. And I always tell, my wife will slap me around the head when she hears me talk like this, but I tell people, the decision was kind of made for me, because I don't have a degree, I don't have a diploma, I don't have anything to fall back on, and I'm not necessarily putting myself down. I'm actually somewhat thankful for that, because a lot of friends that I have who are furniture makers, actually several of them have doctorates in philosophy, and then and they were professors, and then they quit that and got into furniture, and then they quit that because it doesn't pay and went back to teaching. And so if I had that option, maybe I would take it, because it's definitely not easy doing this as a living. It's a lifestyle thing. Like I won't show you around my house, but we have a pretty simple life. But yeah, if my father was alive still, he would be incredibly proud to see that, I'm going around teaching, and I'll be, being asked to teach back in England. And so yeah, it's very exciting, and I'm very proud that I can do this and get other people, other woodworkers who are getting into this excited too. So I think most woodworkers, they can't help but not try to pass on what they can. It's a pretty unique. It really is kind of a unique trade. I don't know if there's any other trades out there that are so passionate about sharing, because we really do. And a lot of this is credited to Instagram, honestly. Instagram has been, as much as I hate it, I love it too. It's been fantastic. Like most of the things I mentioned to you, the opportunities, all came from Instagram. And that was a friend telling me, you need to have Instagram, and me saying, what the heck's that? And then basically downloading it and saying, this is what you do. You post a picture of your work, and it it's great. The magazine found me because of it. A lot of teaching gigs. So yeah, pretty wild.
Well, it's the modern day networking, isn't it? And that's what allows you to be global and make it work. But I mean, I've got 600 learners under the age of 16 that all of them could learn so much from what you have done, and that inspiration, just by knowing that you can just do something out of your hobby and your passion. So there we go. Anyway, enough from me. Let's get you onto gallery view. Right, questions. So we've got lots of questions coming through. I'm going to allow participants to unmute themselves. Hopefully that works. And the first question up was Jim.
Hi, Philip. How are you?
Hey, Jim.
That was fantastic. And I'm particularly inspired by my philosophy is exactly following what you have proven, because I believe that not just Britain, as you probably know, because you said it, the academia is considered to be the elite, and everything else was, pushed aside. And that's changing, and it's changing dramatically. And thankfully, during COVID, it's changed a lot, because people are suddenly realizing that every single person has got a value that is intrinsic within themselves, and particularly those people that move on as talented people within their profession, such as yourself. I know the UTC is now doing this formally, promoting people that have craft skills and skills with their hands, but that's particularly important now. And I was heartened to hear you picking up an apprentice as well, because none of us get any younger. You'll see that eventually. And to pass on your skills in training and on media and on all of that thing is important. But having that apprentice with you is a one-on-one, and you know yourself, because you have been in that situation, how valuable that is in terms of
absolutely.
Your whole life and your direction as well. And I'm so glad that you serendipitously went through some very lucky changes in your life that directed you to where you are now, and you look very comfortable with it. I've got a question that is a bit related to myself, really, because I want to know from a modern point of view. I mean, I've came to Instagram quite recently as well, and you've got YouTube, you've got Instagram, you've got your teaching. You've got all of your, should we say, outlets and channels to market for your skills. Which is, first of all, your favorite, and which is commercially most viable for you, do you think?
I mean, without a doubt, Instagram. And so you mentioned the YouTube, and I not that I'm embarrassed of the YouTube. I did some really good videos, I feel, on YouTube, but I quickly learned you got to do what you're passionate about. And a lot of people look at YouTubers that are doing really well with, million subscribers and this, that, and the other. They're just putting a video up and they're making all this money or this, that, and the other. It's a lot of work. It is a lot of work. And I don't know many YouTubers that are also considered really highly fine, like craftsmen or craftspeople that also do YouTube. There's a few, there's a handful of them, but then they usually don't have a huge following because their demographic is very small. You know, the people that do really well are the ones that are weekend warriors and they build out of 2x4s, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's the place for that, and that gets people excited and anybody just building something is fantastic. But I learned quickly, again, YouTube happened because of a student of mine that said, you need to do a YouTube channel. As soon as he started filming me, he was like, what the heck's wrong with you? Like, you're funny in class, just be you. But, you know, it's different when someone's filming you. So we did some videos and I was just like, I can't do this. Like, it takes me long enough to build a piece of furniture. I can't document it. And it's just not what I was passionate about. So what I liked about Instagram, at the beginning, it all changes. So there's always this love-hate relationship, right? With any of this social media stuff. At the beginning, I didn't overthink any of it. I just posted because it was so easy to do. I didn't even write a lot because my dyslexia, I still have a lot of trouble writing. My wife usually has to check or help me out with spelling. But it was so easy to do. And then what I learned pretty quickly on that, I think I just got lucky at the beginning that I started getting some following and stuff. And you know, as much as you say, oh, it's just a metric, it doesn't matter. But in a business sense, it helps because it's more people seeing it, the percentage of those people being clients. And then I quickly learned they're not just clients as far as buying a piece of furniture. These are people that will help support you in other ways, buying plans and T-shirts and taking your class. And so, and then articles. And so Instagram has been just absolutely wonderful. I go on a little bit of I delete it off my phone once in a while because it's designed to suck you in. That is exactly what it wants to do. It wants you engaged all the time. And you think you're getting work done in the shop, but you're looking at freaking Instagram. So I will delete it every now and then. So if you can be disciplined with it, use it as a tool. It's fantastic. And then it's just communication, you know, getting to be here with you guys. That's because of Instagram. So it really is fantastic. So Instagram, hands down, has just been really wonderful for me all round.
That's fantastic. Thanks for that. It confirms what
absolutely.
I thought of it. It's changed a bit with Facebook's acquisition because you suddenly get this, you suddenly started out, I don't know what I'm at to now, about 13,000 followers. And then it just stopped. And I thought, nobody loves me anymore. Yeah. And then it's nothing to do with that. It's the algorithm.
For everybody.
Yeah, sure. I didn't realize
everybody, that. And I really think it's because, and I don't so I've never got into like any of the games. There's all kinds of weird stuff you can do. And I'm just like, I don't care that much. I'm just going to post when I want to post. But I will tell you that, it wants you engaged. And it's exhausting, as much as I want to be engaged, but how do you be engaged with 100,000 people all the time? You can't. So Facebook took over, even my following, which I'm grateful for any following I had, but it definitely just plateaued. Yeah. And it's just like, wow. And it happened to everyone. Interesting thing.
Lovely.
So thank you very much.
Jeremy, over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hey, Phil. This is a two-part question, I guess. Hey. The first was on topic of one of the things you mentioned in talking about your clients, and the other one's about your podcast. The first one regarding client, you mentioned kind of you now get to the point where you're providing them a design, and they're kind of like authorizing that versus being a lot of collaborative work there. Do you find that probably as woodworkers, we're probably like super into all of the little details and where you really care? Is that how you got there based on that clients tend to not really be that interested in all of the level of detail that we have until they discover it later on? Or how do you think you got there? Or is that it?
So, I mean, it's always difficult to really know, but so that's a great thing that most, like, I think, was it Michael Fortune? Michael Fortune said about a piece he gave me second prize. I was so mad at him. No, he gave me the drawers. He's like, you build drawer. I'm probably gonna screw this up. You build drawers for woodworkers and not for clients. And I get that point. It's like a client just wants a freaking drawer to open. They don't always care about, oh, look at these dovetails and they're done by hand. But I will argue that I think the reason I am at the point, and again, I hate talking like this because I'm still figuring this out. I'm still, every month, I have a backlog for about a year and a half, but that sounds like a lot. That's maybe 6 pieces, if that. And so I'm still figuring this all out too. But what I've been really hell-bent on is, yes, there's some truth to that. Yes, you have to be in control of it a little bit, not too crazy, but I will put the extra bit of work into everything I do. One, I'm satisfying myself. I'm going to be proud about that piece. And even though the client may not pick up on it, like physically be able to say, this is wonderful because of this, this, and this, the overall thing is what they're picking up on. And then when they actually live with it and get to see some of the details, they're like, oh, wow, he gently softened the underside of this or that. That really helps them appreciate it and then come back to you. And so where I'm kind of at now is the clients typically come to me because of my aesthetics. So they've seen my work. So I've been lucky enough to have some work done, put it out there, and then they basically say, I want this piece built, you design it. Obviously, they're not asking for like several designs for them to go back and forth. And what I found this out too by watching my mentor do this, because most, I don't call myself a designer. Like I really don't. I enjoy designing, but I don't call myself a designer. My mentor definitely doesn't call himself a designer. But what I noticed is a client will come about a buffet. So you need to have some information, obviously. I want a buffet. A piece I thought I had in that slide, but I didn't. A piece I'm doing is a record console. And the guy came, I want a record console, and this is the function I want of it. Can you design me a piece? So, okay, I will work on this one piece. I'll put stuff in there that I want to do for me, which usually is a little stupid because I could probably charge the same amount of money and make more money by not adding tambour doors. But then I won't send him 5 iterations of it. And in that 5, because I saw my mentor do this, there'll be 5 designs, and my mentor knows which one he wants and which one he likes and which one he believes is right. And then they would pick the other. And he'd be so like, oh man, dang it. Right. Why are you freaking showing them 5? Just show them the one you want. And then if they come back, say, I really like that. I don't know about the tambour doors. Then you can go from there. And I'm really trying not to sound like I've got this all figured out at all, but I have been incredibly lucky so far. I'll send one design and usually it's a chicken scratch, and they come back, say, oh, I love it. And that's that. And I work on it. The piece recently, I haven't even designed and I've already paid a deposit, and they're like, oh, we know you'll get it, and that's that. So yeah, it's difficult, because we woodworkers are the worst critic, but then you do a lot of details and extra work probably to satisfy yourself and not necessarily the client. But again, I'm going to try to hold on to doing that as long as I can until my wife is saying, you need to move faster because we're not paying the bills. And the way you do that is by charging more. And every year I charge more. So, I'm kind of like Festool. It doesn't get cheaper. It gets more expensive, So I don't know if I answered your question or not, but.
Oh, you did. And that's a really good point about presenting them the idea about what you are excited about building. Because if like you said, if you end up like, it's not the one I wanted to do, then that's not as much fun.
Yeah.
So then
it's kind of hard,
Yeah. The second question is related to your podcast, which I really enjoy. You guys have a lot of fun on there. But recently during pandemic, and because of like Bench Talk and podcasts, like some smaller groups of friends have been getting together kind of like on smaller group chats and doing Zoom type stuff. And there's always kind of this question of, well, should this just become a podcast or not? And then the thought is like, what are the pros and cons from you as having now done the podcast for a while of, you know, how much effort does it take versus just like if you got on with the same people chatting for an hour and a half, what's the pluses and minuses of whether you'd want to do that or not?
So the podcast, the Woodworkers podcast, we haven't done an episode in a long time. And we're just now trying to figure out if we're going to come back. And because it's a lot of work. And so, you know, the difference though is there's a lot of people that do podcasts, but again, I'm just a woodworker. Like, I have no other skills. It's ridiculous. So I can just about turn a computer on. And then you got me, Ben, and then Ramon, the other two hosts, and we're all pretty much the same. So we have no tech background at all. So for us, we wanted a podcast that was not going to be kind of formulated, like Q&A and like just, we wanted to just be like us sitting down like we're doing tonight, and let's just have a chat. We're three professional woodworkers. We're very different in what we do. We're not going to do like Q&A, you know, we're just going to have a chat and just talk about stuff. And then the other part of it, selfishly, was we get to interview some of the best furniture makers out there. And the fact that they even said yes was just always blew my mind. So I got to talk to people I've always wanted to talk to and become friends with. So that's really fantastic. It's a commitment. You got to do it. And when you're running a business and you got kids and family, it's tough. And then three of you are trying to get on the same plan every, you know, once a week, or I think we did bi-weekly. But the tech was getting bad. We used an app and it kept on crashing, and it was kind of embarrassing. We have someone in Australia and it's just not working. So it just became a lot. It's a shame, and I think it will come back, because right towards the end, we started getting some sponsors. But again, we don't want sponsors, and this is the whole YouTube thing, which I didn't like. You start getting a sponsor just because they pay, but their product's crap, but you're going to say it's good because they pay you well. And not saying everyone does that, but I see some pretty weird stuff out there. But we started getting people that we already worked with, like Pentarouter was the last one. And so hopefully we'll pick it back up. I think we're looking at a new app that's meant to be easier. It's done on a computer, so we can have a mic, get the quality better. So, you know, if you have more tech savvy than the three of us, then yeah, you can make it pretty easily. You could do it, and just a slight bit of effort put in it can probably be way better than what we did, because we pretty much didn't do any editing. But it is a lot of work. It's a commitment too.
Okay, thanks.
Do it.
Rusty, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Philip. Speaking of podcasts, this is actually related to my question. So I do a little bit of work with the youth shelter in Atlanta. This is people between 18 and, well, up to 25. And I'm starting to get involved with them because they wanted to do a podcast about what's happening there. It's called the Covenant House. I don't know if you've heard of it. But one of the kids that we interviewed talked about how he would want to be a carpenter, but doesn't really know how to get into it. And so I'm thinking about maybe starting a woodworking shop there. It's probably going to be hand tool only because of liability issues. Yeah, I'm not leaving a table saw there for 16-year-olds or 18-year-olds toilet. So 2 questions for you are, what would you recommend how to get a young man or a young woman and teach them skills that A, would be marketable, and B, hopefully eventually will get them to a point where they can get into an apprenticeship with a furniture maker?
All right, that's a good question. I think, and I can just talk from my point of view, that what got me interested was obviously the concept of like seeing something on paper, understanding, okay, you're making this thing, but then actually seeing it come to fruition and being like, even though it's the crappiest like dovetail or Morrison tenon by hand, I was very proud, like I actually made that. So that just really clicked for me. And it's also saying that I needed something to be able to focus on with my anger. And that really, it just gave me a focus. And most kids, troubled kids, just want to be told they're good at something, right? I mean, it's just, that's it. So the program I went to, it was just a trade school. But the first year is all hand work. It's all hand tools. And I really do, as anyone that knows me on here that follows me at all, they know I'm not like some hand tool purist. I know how to use them. I'm probably not the most proficient with it. I do hang up dovetails because I like the look of it. But if there's a lot of, to do, I'm not doing hand cut dovetails. So I think, if there's a program, if you can get a couple of good little projects, and there's so much resource out there. And I know it's like, depending on the age, but just, pencil. I remember when I went to Maine, it's for inner city kids that I was teaching at the camp there. And these kids were always fighting each other. When it came to the wood shop, they stopped. And they were building pencil boxes, little dovetail drawer type, pencil box type thing, and a pencil box with a lid. Just really simple stuff that they just, they could engage in and really enjoyed. And all we had were some little crappy vices, some 2x4 benches, and it's just hand tools. And it's like, put your hand behind your back, and you kind of dovetail to a pencil line, and that was it. And they were just happy as all get out. So yeah, I think sometimes even with my own kids, I tend to overthink like what I need to do as far as the project goes. I over elaborate it when really they just want to get to use some tools. Even driving nails into a board, they're getting good at swinging a hammer. My kids would be there for hours doing that. And it's like, and I am thinking they have to build some like crazy mechanical something or another. And it's like, no, that they would hate that. they wouldn't want to do that. What was the second part of the question?
The second was about how does one get to an apprenticeship?
Oh, so that's a really, really tough one. And talking in the US, and it's probably the same most places. So far, it's like with the school that I helped start, we are looking at when we come back trying to be more of a 3-month program and try to build upon that. And what's really important is trying to link up companies, furniture shops that will take you on, whether it's 2 days a week or something to as an apprentice. And then hopefully when you finish the program, you can go work there as an apprentice. An apprenticeship is really, really difficult. What I did, and I'm really nervous about having an apprentice because I'm paying her. It's a paid apprenticeship. And she's fantastic, but she's still pretty, green and learning, and that's fine. But it's like, oh wow, I've got to make that extra bit of money now. And I don't know how long it's going to go on for. And that's the nice thing with our relationship was I really want to offer you an apprenticeship. I think this would really help you. You're in an ideal situation. You don't have kids. You don't have a lot of commitment. If you did, I wouldn't take you on because I would hate to take you on and 6 months later be like, I can't afford you anymore. But when I looked for my apprenticeship, I basically just got online. I went through a bunch of websites and totally judging it like, book by its cover, right? Just looking at it and being like, oh, and just reaching out, just kept on bugging them. And my mentor that I did 7 years for, I came across his website and I skipped it because it looked almost too professional. It looked like it was a Tom Moser type setup. He had beautiful photography. And my wife was the one who was like, you need to look at this guy. He's a one-man shop. I called him and we spoke, no joke, probably 2.5 hours. And we just started talking. He didn't want to hire me. I said, please let me come out and meet you. I got to meet him. I brought my portfolio of like my old vellum drawings. And that's what got me the job. Afterwards, he told me, the fact you were that passionate, you showed me those designs. That's what I was like, I'm going to take a risk with this guy. So I think you just got to be persistent about it. And even right now, you can be drawing and designing and don't get too caught up into like how things should be done. Just find your way to do it. Because I know a lot of people, even with a shop, garage shop, they get stifled because they're like, oh, I can't design because in my apprentice, I don't have anything original. My stuff's not original. If it was, it'd be ugly. It's all built upon what's been done. So I was just very persistent, and I put together the best CV I could, and just I bugged the heck out of people until they would meet up with me.
I got you. Thank you. I wasn't thinking for myself. I was thinking for one of the kids that potentially would like to get to it. So kind of lay out what plan you need to have. So having a portfolio, having some work that they've tried to design or build would be really useful. I doubt any of them will be able to get a scholarship to RISD, but maybe they don't have to have a scholarship to RISD to get to
and like I did, I worked before I even did my apprenticeship. I worked with graduates from RISD. So if you're in an area, you look up like the local either community colleges, the shops, furniture shops, whether there's a program that really focuses on furniture and design, and look up the graduates and just be like, hey, I'll come sweep up your shop, because that's what I did. I didn't get paid at first. I swept up the shop. I just wanted to be around them, and hopefully you have a good enough attitude that they can get on with you. That's the most important thing. Is most of these people, me and my mentor saw each other more than we saw our wives. And so we have to connect. And he's had people come and work, and it didn't work out because and there wasn't nothing wrong with the other guy, but they just didn't connect. So that's tough for someone to take on that. But yeah, like just look, tell the people you're thinking of, if they can just really look what's going on in their area and try to find that like shop that they could see themselves working in, and just pretty much offer themselves up for free at first. You kind of have to, in a way, to just cut your teeth almost.
Gotcha. Thanks so much, man.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Matthias, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you very much, Phil. That was hugely interesting and absolutely beautiful and gorgeous work. My apologies if I seem a bit distracted on video here, because the neighbor's house across the road is on fire. There are 3 fire engines in the road right now. But that's not what I wanted to talk about. I was fascinated to see how much inspiration you obviously draw from mid-century modern, from Scandinavian furniture. I'm originally Swedish myself, so it's a furniture style I feel a lot of affinity to. My idea about a lot of the classics out of that period is that it was mainly designed to be production furniture, and it still is. I mean, you can still go out today and order brand new Carl Hansen, Carl Anderson, Carl Malmsten, Yngwie Ekström, and so on and so forth, because they designed not so much, many of them were skilled woodworkers in their own right, but as designers, I have the idea that they mainly designed for production, quality production, and compared to the furniture giants of this world, small-scale production. But still, we're talking thousands of chairs every year. We're talking hundreds of tables every year. Is this something you could ever see happening to your furniture? That, as it were, it would be produced by some sort of factory system at level of quality, still to make it more accessible, to make the designs more accessible?
So, it's funny you mentioned that. A couple of things you touched on there. One of the things, a lot of the record consoles I do were actually designed for a gentleman that basically restored a lot of the vintage cabinets. But as you mentioned, a lot of them were production, and there are different levels of that production, but a lot of them are not very good. A lot of them looked great. The design was really good, but the quality was not what it was about. It was a production piece. And so he reached out to me because he had a higher end clientele that wanted that look, but they wanted it done by the individual craftsman in his shop. They bought into that whole story, the romanticy of it. And so that's where that came from. So there was that aspect of it. And then before the pandemic, I was talking with a gentleman that's opened up a manufacturing facility in Austin. So again, not IKEA, but it's going to be basically, I would patent, or however that works, royalties. I would get royalties for it, but I would design a line of furniture, and then they would build it, and it would get to more of the masses, and it'd still be a nice piece. And it's about the design. The quality is not going to be as good as what I would do, but you would design with that in mind.
Yeah.
What I liked about what he was trying to do was he was going to have like 5 different designers, and they were going to be local, and it was going to be a training facility also. So we were going to have him linked up with the school that we were doing, and he would also have a gallery where the designers that the production pieces were being made, they also had the one-off. So in the gallery, you had like a one-off by Philip Morley, and you could buy that piece at that obviously higher price. I was excited about that at the beginning, but it may be I just don't like making money, and that's not a good thing. Because what I found was, well, everything's changed now with the pandemic. So, but even before that, he'd be like, "Hey, so have you worked on that line of furniture?" And I've had several pieces, but I had a really hard time letting go of them. And it was kind of silly because I spoke to my wife. I said, "Man, I've had these pieces designed for probably 10 years. I haven't built them because I'm busy building these one-off pieces. But now I am building them with my apprentice." That's the whole idea. The only way I can make the apprentice work, she can't work on the individual pieces, the one-off pieces. She helps on certain aspects, but the way I can pay her is she's working on a line of furniture. And this is very early stage. Like, we haven't even finished any of the pieces yet. So hopefully that will work out. And I just found myself not super motivated to sit down and just force myself and force designs out so that this company could build. I like the idea of it. You know, I do like the idea of it. And, you know, again, it's that deal of, if that can bring in a little bit of money that continues to help me do what I do, I don't think it would cheapen what I do. I think you could spin it in a certain way. But yeah, it's interesting you brought it up, but that has been brought up twice by 2 different people now. I have not heard anything back in a while, but I imagine it's because of the pandemic. So maybe once things settle down, get a little bit more back to normal after the election and stuff, I might be hearing from them. But I did find it really interesting. Now I was like, I just don't want to sit down and force myself to design these pieces.
No, I mean, I very perfectly see what you mean, because if, as you said, there is nothing wrong with that kind of concept, as long as you don't sell whatever it is you sell. If you're selling IKEA is not saying that they're selling anything but IKEA, and you might like it or dislike it, but it's fair enough as far as that goes. And if you're hand-making unique pieces, that is perfectly fine as far as that goes. So anything is okay, in my view, as long as you're honest about it. If you're saying, this is my design, but I haven't built it myself, it has to be designed so that it can be produced within, to some extent, produced to a price point. As long as you're honest about those things, there's nothing wrong with it. But
and he was.
If you don't feel the joy of doing it, it's going to be a chore, and life brings us enough chores without that we have to go out and look for them on our own.
Yes, no, that's exactly it. I loved how he was going to do it. It was very clear. This is designed by Philip Morley, built by us. I would have to okay the prototypes. I would have to do like a quality check every now and then. Like, it was a very open thing. He didn't want to sell something I would be proud of. But yeah, it was just, I didn't have so much joy and to force myself to sit down to do this as I would if a client came to me and said, "I'm looking for a piece to go here. Can you design me this?" You know? So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Great question.
So a question from Belgium, a Swedish man in Belgium to an American man an English man in America. We now have to probably go a bit north to see if the wall was there. So why not Canada? So Rick.
Hey there, Phil. Really appreciate your talk. I can kind of relate a little to your difficulties in school. I was an undiagnosed dyslexic as well, and ended up being a high school dropout. Found woodworking as a result of not being able to do anything else. So, so yeah, that's very cool. My question is, you mentioned a couple of times your concern about, or maybe it's not a concern, that only rich people can afford your work. And so I'm just wondering, maybe not so much on a business side, but just on on your personal side, is there any more on how you deal with that for yourself?
So yeah, well, I guess I should clarify this too a little bit, because one thing that's always been remarkable to me, and I noticed this with my my mentor, and also my apprenticeship. You know, you're working on a piece that's $60,000+ for a china cabinet, and you know, in my head, it's like, holy cow! Now I know when you break down the hours and material and everything, you're like, yeah, that wasn't enough money. And I always assumed that there would be, and it's tough, like what is rich? But I always assumed it'd be like this, you know, you roll up to this mansion and it's got like Bentleys, and it was always someone with like a nice house. They had good jobs, but they were pretty practical. And, you know, they'll have like a Prius in the front. It was never a fancy car, but what was important to them was this notion of this craftsman building a piece that just made them feel really good in their space, and that's what was important to them. So it was a sacrifice for them to be able to buy this piece. Now, of course, they could afford it, but it wasn't like a very easy thing to do. What I liked about that was that piece was always going to be in their family, and I learned quickly I don't do work for interior designers, because usually it's like what's niche, what's happening now, and even if it's the richest clients out there, they're going to switch it out in a year's time. They're not necessarily buying an heirloom piece, and so I have trouble, and it's kind of a stupid thing. A lot of my clients, yes, they have the money to afford to what I do, and I would love for more people to be able to have what I do. And that's just not possible if I want to try to make a living, because it's expensive, because it takes time. And maybe I'm misthinking this, but like the whole craftsman movement was kind of that way, but then realized it's like, oh wait, yeah, if you're going to work on a piece individually by yourself, that piece is definitely going to be more expensive. And that's just a struggle I have. You know, and even to the point where I'm like, I like teaching because it's kind of giving back in the craft. I would love to one day be able to have troubled teens come out to the shop, something where I can give back and inspire them, and not just build for like the top 1%, and not that I even do right now. So it is something I struggle with, but not that much. I you know, my clients ultimately, I can tell you this right now, again, I'm still really new in this whole journey, even though it sounds like I've been at it a while. It's still, I've got a long ways to go, and hopefully I can keep doing it. But in the time that I've done it by myself, I've had two very, 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 very rich clients that were also kind of famous, that kind of screwed me over. And they did not necessarily appreciate what I was doing, but they bought it because it was almost like buying a Gucci bag. You know, it's like they just wanted a piece by me because they've heard, you know, I'm good at what I do. Every other client really, really, you know, they appreciate and value what I do for them. And they show that in so many different ways, you know, by being patrons, and helping support me in what I do. So yeah, it's a tough thing. If you're going to build, a piece of furniture that takes you 700 hours, you got to charge a lot of money for it.
Yeah, no, I can totally appreciate that. That's cool that most of your customers can actually see the value in it. It's not the Gucci bag. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Chester, over to you.
Yeah. Philip, that was just wonderful. And I find a lot of connections with you. And there's a lot of topics that you hit on that I think are struggles that any artist goes through. And I think that you have not used that term. You've referred to yourself as you've mentioned designer, craftsman, that sort of thing. But I think that one of the issues I had for many years was people kept trying to tell me to develop a product that I could mass produce. Right. And in when you think of in terms of your skill set and everything as a business, then what happens is you have to maintain a certain level. And there's all these little jumping off points for businesses. If you read any of the books on being a successful businessman, you come to these precipices and there's a point where you have to leap across it and have faith that you can excel, and you will excel. But it's difficult for a lot of people because either they have a fear or because they want to be true to their art and to their artistic side. And I just wanted to warn you with the guy that wants to make your furniture is to also involve a really good lawyer. Because you need to protect your designs because they're absolute quality. From everything that I saw of yours, I have a sort of a simpatico with your design ethic. Particularly, I think that I love the chairs, but I've seen that basic format. But your finishing touches is what really sets them apart from what you mass produce. And then your consoles and your buffets and banquettes, they have almost a Germanic European Art Nouveau external casing around an American a craftsman style in the center. So I wanted to compliment you on that. And so my question to you. And I know that's a roundabout a lot of stuff, but number one, do you feel like your dyslexia actually heightens your design ethic? You tend to have a balance, and I know with writing and with math, that can be a hindrance because sometimes people see things backwards or out of place, and they see it in order, but it's not. And so I wonder if you feel like there's anything about your dyslexia that has something to do with your design. And I have several friends in Austin and who buy furniture, and I had to move from a town. I was doing film in order to support my woodworking habit. So I designed films and television shows. And I lived in a place where people were very much, well, that costs this much money to build. I won't do that. And I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, which is up in the mountains, where there's a great appreciation for craft. And now I have clients that I also give them only one design. And but they're so grateful even before I've given them the design that I'm doing the work, that it surpasses the monetary pluses. It gives me a lot of satisfaction because I know they're coming to me for my design, and they're very appreciative afterwards. So I'll leave you.
That's all. Yeah, that's awesome. As far as the dyslexia goes, I think it's always difficult to know because I don't see it, right? But working with my mentor, for 7 years, he gets to know you pretty well, and pretty quick. I do know that I see things differently, and I can visualize things really, really well, but even differently than like me and you could be talking. We could have a drawing in front of us and we'd say, describe it. I will be describing it very different than you're describing it. And my mentor noticed that very early on. And he just learned that he's like, you've got it. Like, you don't need me for this. He would say like he learned as much from me as I did from him. And I think, he's just a very gracious person. and I definitely came and brought different skill sets from there and different things. But he would always let me figure out how to build jigs, and I love like building. I love building something to take away skill, which sounds really kind of horrible, but a lot of what I like doing is the skill is in building it so it's proficient, accurate, safe, and repeatable. And that sounds like you're dumbing it down. There's a lot that goes into that as a skill in itself. But we would like bump heads a little bit. He's like, no, like if you do this, and I'm like, no, what if I do this? And we're basically like saying the same thing, but I'm just seeing it differently. So he always was very kind at saying like, yeah, my mind works fantastic for like figuring things out, and he would give me a problem and be like, hey, figure this out. How do we do this? One of those buffets I showed, there's a lot of detail on it that doesn't really show in the picture, but it has a splayed side. And I always wanted to splay things with him. And he was very much like, no, we can't do that, because if you do that, now the drawers have to be splayed and the banks have to be splayed and the doors have to hinge inwards and not outwards. And the moment that made me really proud is when he came by the shop when I started my own business. And he was very supportive of me doing that. And he saw that piece and he looked at me and goes, I should just freaking told you yes, and you do it because you know how to figure it out. And that's, I think, how my mind probably does think a little differently, but sometimes that can be bad too. So I don't. It's really
interesting
know,
though, because
honestly.
that piece when you had it up, I looked at the exterior splayed legs, and it had a really nice form. And then my second thought was, oh, what did he do with the drawers? And you followed the contour of the splay of the outside of the leg, and it caught my attention, and I really appreciated that, because you could have still gone square, but you didn't.
Yeah,
You followed
I could have kept the inside square, so that and that's the funny thing. It's such a stupid little subtle thing, but the legs are already tapered, and then on top of that, I splayed it. And so it's like, my mentor always be like, why the heck would you do that? And I was like, because it just gives it this beautiful grounding. Because most people won't notice it. I mean, they will notice it. They may not be able to say what's happening.
I think it had a gracefulness. I think it added a gracefulness to it because it followed just like a little dress, just sort of flowed.
And a lot more time.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Well,
thank you. I appreciate it.
Phil, you've given us an absolutely amazing talk, and we're all, wanting more. But I think at this point I have to say thank you very much, and ask everybody to thank you in the normal way, which is to raise their bench beverages, and raise a toast to Phil and the bench.
Phil on the bench.
Thank you, guys. It's been a lot of fun.
It's a high-tech conversation
And a low-tech topic.
live on the World Wide Web via Zoom. Bench Talk 101.